I wonder when you were a child whether you had a favorite illustrator of children's books like I did. In fact, there were a number of illustrators that I really liked, and they were quite different. For instance, one was Quentin Blake, famously the illustrator for Roald Dahl, who wrote James and the Giant Peach and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, lots of really interesting, imaginative books for children. Another was Chris Van Allsburg, probably most famous today because he wrote The Polar Express, which was made into this movie that I don't think was so well illustrated. But you could see that the styles of these two illustrators are very different. The style of the illustrations gave me a different sense of what kind of world I was stepping into. The imaginative world of the illustrator is exactly what we are thinking about when we're thinking about the illustrations of an example. An example in a speech shouldn't just be an instance of something. An instance of something doesn't really add to our understanding of it. Really, it should have characteristics or qualities that are unusual, unexpected, and perhaps even distinct from what the category normally is like. They might not be representative examples of what the thing is, they might be anomalous in some sense. I want to give you a sense of what a good example will look like when you use it as an illustration. Take a look at some of these cars. They seem very fashionable, and yet they appear to be rotting away, uncared for. They come from the car collection of the Sultan of Brunei. The Sultan of Brunei is one of the wealthiest people on earth. His car collection has been rumored to be worth upwards of $5 billion. And in the heat of Brunei, some of these cars have literally melted in his garage, unattended. What's this an illustration of? It could be an illustration of any number of things, but let's take the most obvious one, which is extreme wealth. One of the things that this example, I think, brings forth or illustrates about the nature of extreme wealth in our society is the way that someone might be acquisitive way beyond what they can actually use. The desire to own these things and the value, the individual value that's given to them, actually is undermined by the number of cars he has. So maybe you're really into cars as well, like the Sultan of Brunei is, though probably you don't own as many cars as he does. I'm going to give you two very different examples, but they both turn on a similar theme. It has to do with the relationship of an individual to protest. Grigoris Lambrakis was a Greek politician. He was famous, among other things, for his strong anti-war activism. You can see in this photograph that he is marching alone in Athens, holding a banner that says Hellas, which means Greece, surrounded by the peace symbols. This was a protest that he took all alone. The protest had been banned by the Greek authorities in 1961, and Lambrakis decided to nevertheless go ahead with a major protest. He was arrested at the end of this protest and soon after was assassinated. After his assassination, there was a huge number of people that rallied to protest against the government, upwards of 500,000 people. Now I want to share with you a passage that comes from a recent book about mass protests close to our own time. This particular passage concerns a Brazilian protest movement which had organized around 5 causes. One of the things that the journalist who wrote the book, Vincent Bevins, discovered was that the nature of these 5 causes and how they were organized came from one individual. In 2013, I tracked down the man who had uploaded the 5 causes video. He wanted to be identified only as Mario, but he proved to me that he controlled the YouTube channel that hosted the clip. We talked for a while on Facebook Messenger about how he got into politics and how he heard about Anonymous. He never joined that group, he said. It doesn't work like that. He just liked the stuff he saw, so he got a mask and made a video in the trademark style. What about the 5 causes, I asked. How did the group decide on those? Oh, no one decided, he responded. He had simply made them up. He had pieced the causes together from stuff he had read on Facebook and came up with a list. 5 seemed like a good number. Soon after, the president of Brazil at the time, Dilma Rousseff, agreed to make 2 of the 5 causes into law. Both of these examples, I think, show us something about the relationship of an individual to a mass protest movement. We could explore these examples to say many other things. What was the relationship of the Greek mass protests to the assassination? Or were there other contexts that could help us understand it better? Were there anything? Both of these examples show us something about the relationship of an individual to a mass protest movement. But I think that they illustrate different aspects of what we might wish to say about that if we were speaking on that topic ourselves. We might explore those examples in greater depth and find even more to say. But I would say that the first one maybe gives an image of bravery. It gives us a sense of the individual's power and self-sacrifice in order to mobilize many other people. The second one, I think, even though it had a powerful effect on the movement that it was part of and was able to accomplish something, perhaps, at least in the way that it was rendered in this account, makes it seem kind of arbitrary and shows that mass protest movements perhaps lack a certain kind of direction, a certain kind of leadership that might come from one individual in a different kind of position. So I think one of the things you might think about when you're trying to illustrate your points is what stories give the best account for what your interpretation of the situation is. That doesn't come easily. You'll have to read widely and broadly in order to discover examples that work. And not only that, you'll have to find the descriptions of those examples that work for your case. In some sense, whatever your example is, you're also the creator of it. How you discuss it, the terminology you use, what details you pull out, affect the way that an audience will see and understand it. So take that into consideration as you look for examples. You're part of making the example